Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Canadian Football Central, CFL content for the fans, by the fans. And we had a long video yesterday. We were originally planning on doing all 9 teams, but then it was like an hour and 40 minutes, and I was like, you know what? This would probably work best as a two-parter. So
Carter wimped out. Let's be honest.
I was so tired. It was like 1 a.m, and I was done. And funny enough, we're starting the recording today at like 1 a.m, but I have a little bit more energy, so that's okay. And we only have 4 teams to cover, so we can do this. So, is there anything you have to say before we get into it, Rick? Or
yeah, we're gonna be discussing the Hamilton Blue Bombers.
I was about to say we're gonna start with the Ticats, who certainly have gotten their fair share of bombers over there. So
it's
Rick,
funny because
I'm gonna let you start it off because this is your team.
It's funny because everyone always brings up the whole, oh, you're signing people from Toronto, or Hamilton people are going to Toronto. We get 6 from the Bombers.
Yeah.
So, Carter, you have the sheet open?
Yeah, I do. Do you want me to kind of go through?
Well, no, I just wasn't sure if you had the sheet open on your side.
You got for Bombers. I see you picked up Wolotarski.
Yes.
You picked up Lawler.
And according to the press conference today, apparently Ted Gavaya says that Wolotarski was an easy sign.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not exactly happy that the Bombers dropped him. I've always liked Wolotarski. To me, Wolotarski is a consistent, never going to get you 30, 40 yards, but if you're in second down and you're second and long and you need a first down, Wolotarski's your guy. He'll get it.
My understanding is either A, he'll go in the dirty areas, so if you need a jump ball, he'll go up and get it. Or, like you said, if it's a long ball or even second and 5, he'll go get those 5 yards.
I wouldn't say a long ball. I wouldn't even necessarily say a jump ball. I'd actually say where he does better is with some of those low throws where it's not a loft pass, but it's just a very quick first down. You know what I mean? Where let's say it's second and 7, he'll run that short dagger route. He'll go about 5-7 yards just to about that first down marker. He'll turn straight out, and Caleras would just whip one right at him or at his knees, and he'll slide and he'll just grab that. And it'll be one of those things. He won't get any yards after, but that's not his job. His job, in terms of his role that he played on the Bombers, was just to be that consistent first down guy where if there's no long ball options, if there's no Dalton Schoen looking for the wonderful catch, or Kenny Lawler or whatever, or Nick Dembski, he would just fit that role well. And that's where I think a lot of Bomber fans were very, very happy with Drew Wolotarski. I still think that they could have made a little bit more out of him. It's a shame to see him go, to be honest, as he's been a Bomber for a while. And I would have preferred to see him stick around, but I think it's a great signing by the Ticats, Drew Wolotarski.
So Bo actually went from two. I forget, it was under 300,000 last year. Now he's at 338 with incentives.
That's well earned.
Plus incentives.
That's well earned. We should go through the way we did before with the quarterback.
No. That's why I'm starting with Bo.
Yeah.
So I mean, you can't say he didn't have a bad season because he had 5,451 yards, 32 touchdowns, 18 interceptions. Yeah, he led the league with interceptions, but I mean, touchdown to interception ratio is not too bad.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's literally nearly 2 touchdowns per interception, and he was nominated for MOP. I know a lot of Ticats fans were hoping to see him win MOP, and I definitely thought there was a decent argument to be made there, but I think the inability for that success to be able to pull the Ticats out of the situation they were in team-wise held them down a little bit. But nevertheless, whether he won MOP or not, he had a fantastic season, and it was worthy of getting that bonus, and has shown that if the Ticats through free agency are going to kind of reinvigorate their roster and go on a bit of a
Mm-hmm.
push, which it looks like they might with how much talent they acquired. There's a lot of talent in this Ticats roster that they acquired through free agency. And I think Bo Levi Mitchell is going to have a lot more options than he did last year. Not that he didn't have options last year and that there weren't guys that played very, very well. I think a guy like Brendan O'Leary Orange was able to get a bit more field time than he did in Winnipeg before that. And so I think there's a lot of potential there. Shamar Bridges, still quite young, and there's going to be a lot you're going to see from him. Just going to want to keep him healthy. Tim White, if he's able to kind of like when Tim White was playing at his best, he was great. It just kind of took him a bit for him to kind of get a little bit of pep in his step. But now adding Kenny Lawler to the mix, you're talking about a deadly receiving core. That's also like half of like either half or more than half of it is friggin' Bombers. But you know,
I was gonna say, don't forget Keandre Smith too.
Yes, that is true. Yeah.
The interesting thing is, I thought that we were gonna go like, because last year we had Greg Bell, then we also had James Butler, and then we had Andre Milinovic Litre. We only have Bell and Litre now. They didn't go out and get another one, so that will be an interesting.
I think
duo.
that's okay. I think that Greg Bell had done relatively well. I thought Litre in his role was decent. And they were also playing Litre in short yardage, right?
Yeah, as a short yardage quarterback.
Okay. Can we normalize this? I love the idea of using a big running back as your QB in short yardage. Like, I'll put it this way. As much as I love Chris Streveler, Rick, I want you to answer just yes or no, honestly. Do you think the Bombers would do successfully in short yardage if they just snapped it to Brady Oliveira?
I mean,
my answer is a resounding yes. You're talking about the best running back in the league, and he's a big body that can push.
But here's the thing, though. With him doing all of that and then his regular rushings, that guy's body is going to take a beating over.
Oh, yeah. I'm not necessarily saying that you should. I mean, at the end of the day, the Bombers have Streveler signed. Just use him in that role. But I'm saying is that if you're... I think you can make a significant case that he would succeed in that role. That's all I'm asking. Would he succeed? Yes or no?
Oh, I'm gonna answer a question. So if they did that, you would see more of a 50-50 split between your two running backs. Only because, like, yeah, I do say that it would work for Winnipeg.
Okay. Yeah.
But if you have them do five runs and then do short yardage, obviously he's going to be tired, so you're going to have to bring in.
Again, I'm not saying you have to do this. I'm just saying I think more teams should look at this. Like I think, for example, last year Saskatchewan should have looked at this, especially when they were running like Hickson as your main running back when Ouellette was healthy. Run Ouellette in that position because Ouellette wasn't your main running back for some of those games. So in that instance, you could play him that way. But I guess the general point is that I like the system that the Ticats have used a little bit in that regard. I'm not saying that all teams have to do it. I'm not saying it's always preferred. I'm just saying I think some teams should dabble with the idea.
I mean, there was only two teams last year, us and BC, because BC had McKee do it.
This is true. Yep.
Before we go on to the offensive line, there's a funny story that happened. So when Ted Gavea became GM, he called Bo, and Bo said the first thing he said, "Well, why'd you call me? You should have called David Beard first. Your center, right?" So then he goes to call Kenny Lawler during the tampering window, and he goes, "Ted, Tim White's still in Hamilton? Because I really want to play with Tim White." "Yes, Tim White's still in Hamilton. What do you think we're going to do? Go and release him?" "No." "Yes, Tim White is still in Hamilton," but I just thought that was a funny chuckle.
Yeah.
So we signed Liam Dobson from you guys.
Dobbenheimer.
So the way that it's going to work,
you got him locked up for 2 years.
Yes. I just don't know what the salary is yet. I haven't looked into it. But
Those are
with
kind of
that
hard
being
to get
said,
with linemen.
well, with our line last year, no starter was making less than 200,000. Like we were almost paying $1 million just for our offensive line last year, and
Wow,
that's
really?
with
It was that
Figueroa
much?
last year.
Holy crap! I didn't realize you were paying that
Between
much.
175 and 200.
Jeez, there you go.
So Liam Dobson is either most likely right now they have him penciled in at the right guard,
Yeah, that makes sense.
and then
Guard is Liam
Woodmansy's going to move
playmaker.
from right guard to center.
Who would you say is kind of the standout offensive lineman for the Ticats with who they have currently?
I would say there's like not one person. I would say if there's two, it's Revenberg on the left side, the left guard, and then it would have been Woodmansey on the right guard. But now that Woodmansey's center, those are going to be the top two that I would say.
Okay. I will want you at
Because
some point to let me know what
Jor-
you think of Liam Dobson in that spot.
Jordan Murray last year was just one of the ones. Oh, who was it on Winnipeg? Like you're always getting penalties, offside, like encroachment. Who was it? Was it Neufeld or
It
someone
was
like that? That would
Neufeld.
always get like
It was either
stupid.
Neufeld or Kolinkowski. It was mostly Neufeld, though.
Yeah, so that's Jordan Murray's. Like he would always get like penalties every now.
Yeah,
and
it
then.
was more of actually an issue the year before with Jeff Gray. Jeff Gray got so many, but overall,
So-
looks like a good, especially a good interior offensive line. We'll just have to see how those flanks do, those offensive tackles.
So,
But then that brings us what?
So the funny thing is, because you said, "Oh, we're pulling all the players from Winnipeg," so two things with the defensive line is so. Ted said today in his press conference that he likes to have younger players that will develop and not go for the high price defensive line.
Yeah.
So that's why he went for Tishan Garbutt. So that's number 5.
Yeah.
You have number 6 in Miles Fox.
Yeah, and both of them are signed to 2-year deals.
Yeah, and don't forget, Owen Hubert came from you guys too.
Yeah.
So that's number 7.
And he still has 2 years. Yeah. And he's just 24 years old.
So, and if I remember correctly, Garbutt and Mario Kendrick Jr., who was with us last year, both went to college together.
Oh, fun fact.
So, if I am not mistaken, it's going to be Brandon Barlow on the left side. If you had offense here, so if we're talking right here, it's going to be Barlow, Casey Stiles, Fox, and Kendrick, and then Garbutt and Luke Brudebaker on that other end.
Is it or is it Brubacher?
Oh yeah, sorry, Brubacher. I don't know why I said Brudebaker for some reason.
That's all right.
But yeah,
overall looks to be a relatively good defensive line. Now, before we actually head to the linebackers, one thing I actually think we should take a look at is a big issue for the Ticats last year was that defensive coordinator spot.
Yes.
Who is your defensive coordinator? Is it Brett Monson from
Monson, who used to be the defensive coordinator for Calgary last year?
Okay.
Now, I know what everyone's going to say. Everyone's going to say, well, Calgary's team was garbage last year. Your team's going to be garbage last year. You got to remember, when Calgary had that point, I want to say, what was it, 16-19?
Yeah.
Monson was... I actually did a video on Monson. Right. And it was... Oh, I forget, what was it? 15, 16, 17, 18... or it's like 17, 18, 19. He had like 4 years where the defense was the top defense in the league.
Yeah.
So because Dave Dickinson wasn't giving them players, obviously your defense isn't going to do great.
Yeah.
But
No, but all in all, and it makes sense as you guys lost. You were getting free service out of Chris Jones, who is your
yes,
defensive coordinator ever since being fired by the Edmonton Elks as their head coach. Did very, very well as a defensive coordinator, in spite of his not doing
I on
well as a head coach. And now he's actually down
with
in
North Carolina.
North Carolina with former Super Bowl winner. I don't even know how many he won. Bill Belichick, who was with the New England Patriots during the Tom Brady days. So Chris Jones doing well with some college football down south. And so the Ticats lock up a defensive coordinator for a lot of the new pieces that they bring in, which brings us towards the linebacker core, where they grab another bomber in Brian Cole. And how would you describe the linebacker core as a whole?
So, I mean, yeah, we have Kyle Wilson, kind of like because Simone Lawrence played the middle linebacker position,
Yeah.
but Kyle Wilson is kind of like the veteran
Yeah.
on the linebackers.
Mhm.
But I mean, at the same time, Ray Wilburn also had time down with the Broncos, so it's not like Ray Wilburn. I don't know why I said Wilson, but it's Wilburn. Um, so he's had some, league experience. Ryan Baker, his first year last year, this guy already had 45 tackles in 13 games, so he'll be our starter
Okay.
for the linebackers. Um, like it's just a younger group,
Yeah.
but I believe if I read between the lines at the press conference today, Brian Cole will be more of a special teams. He'll be like the backup
Okay. So
on
you
the
may not have him
Sam
ever the
linebacker
starting
position
role.
and special teams.
Okay.
Yeah, so he'll have like the backup, and then he'll play some Sam linebacker stuff on some packages.
Yeah. Hmm. So overall, how do you feel about this linebacker core kind of compared to the group that you had last
I
year?
mean, I wish we had. I mean, there's one linebacker that's or I should say a DB that's playing Sam linebacker, which we'll get into the DBs when we get to the DBs.
Yeah.
Um, but I wish we had like a Micah Alway type linebacker or like someone in the
Just kind of
linebacker position.
just a kind of a staple
Yeah,
that
but
you'll
the way that
have is this
I
guy
was
at a
reading in the
position.
lines today is that the GM didn't want to spend too much of like the big like so much of the money going out and just getting like the one player or
To be fair,
that
that
player
that
like
is a smart thing. Like let's just take like if you look at how do you pronounce his last name? Ted Gavoa or something?
Ted Gavea.
Ted Gavea. Sorry, I struggle with the last name. But the
Yeah.
if you look at kind of the way that he ran the Bombers
Mhm.
never really made huge splashes in the free agency. A lot of the
No.
talent they built was from within, and so by doing that, as much as it sometimes took a bit of a challenge to find that talent, whenever you did, it meant that you were able to get them at an affordable price. Again, Dalton Schoen for 2 years, he was just a complete rock star in the CFL, and he was making $75,000. And so that amount of cap, like being available, allowed the Bombers when it looked like they really had an opportunity to spend that money elsewhere. And so
Mhm.
I think he's trying to kind of give himself Lee room to kind of see how the team does, find some good talent within, and then roll with that. As that again, it was a tried and true formula from his time in Winnipeg. So I don't blame him one bit for doing that. But that then brings us to the secondary.
To our bread and butter in this defense.
There's a lot to talk about here.
Because we got Deshaun Amos from
Yep.
Toronto. We got Reggie Stubblefield from Montreal. And I found out today, Stubbs barbecue sauce.
Yeah.
If you ever go and buy it in a grocery store, it was actually made by his great grandfather.
Oh my god. There you go.
And also, he told the media today that he was actually offered more money by other teams, and
Oh yeah.
he took less to come to Hamilton.
Well,
They signed him to a 3-year deal.
that's always good to hear, isn't that?
What was I gonna say? Yeah, because you'll have, if I understood it correctly, you'll have Peters, Talbert, and I mean Talbert led the secondary in tackles, being in a first year last year.
Yeah.
Cachatonis, Amos, and then Jonathan Moxey at the right side corner.
Yeah.
It's funny because earlier today, I forget who it was that said it. Um, I think it was Stubblefield, if I'm not mistaken. It was
Yeah.
Stubblefield or Garbett. They're like, oh, at the press conference, they're like, oh, this Hamilton's one team that always beats Toronto. But Toronto goes to the Grey Cup and wins. But they're like, oh, Hamilton was always good, like a hard team to play against.
Yeah.
Like out of the two players, Garbott and Lawler, that were at the press conference today, they both said the same things. Whenever Winnipeg played Hamilton, it
Well,
was
I mean, for
always
how many
hard.
years, despite the fact that Winnipeg was able to do very, very well against Hamilton in the postseason, for how many
Mm-hmm.
years were they not able to get a win in Hamilton? I mean, they won this year, but
Yeah.
it was a few years where they were not able to get a win at Tim Hortons Field. Or did they still call it that, or did they change the name? I'm trying to.
No, so t- Tim Hortons never renewed their naming rights.
So what's it called now?
So as of right now, I don't. There, it's currently named Hamilton Stadium
Oh, it's
until
up
they
in
get a
the.
sponsor.
Oh, but they will. So we'll just
Yeah,
we'll have to see.
that's just what the name of it is right now.
I see.
Then you have your good friend Mark Leggio, who hit 90% last year, only missed 5 field goals,
He did well there.
missed
This
two
is
extra
true.
points.
Yep.
The only question mark that I have is Nick Constantino. We haven't heard a single peep from him,
Yeah.
and that's because he was getting tryouts in the NFL. So
Okay.
I don't know if, because I know with the Americans you get 1+1 options contracts.
Yeah.
With Canadians come out of the draft, they automatically get a 3-year contract. I
Okay.
don't know what global players get, so I don't know if he's under contract, because when free agency began yesterday,
Yeah.
um, they had that's when it stopped for the breaking point of when CFLers could go sign in the NFL.
Yep.
So now you can't sign in the NFL until next, like, off season, if
Oh.
you're on a CFL contract.
Hmm.
So I don't even know who our punter is.
I see. So
And
with that,
if you go into the, if you just want kind of like a visual thing, if you go to sheet 1,
okay.
I actually I used kind of Troy from Three Downs, his depth chart, and that's kind of what our depth chart looks like right now.
Ooh, I like how you have this laid out.
So like you have Bridges and White on the left, Smith, Lawler, and Wolotarski on the right. There's no way that you'll be able to double team both Lawler and White and leave one of them open. Like, you'd be a fool.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I always liked having O'Leary Orange as kind of a a guy that you can cycle in every now and again. And so I
Oh,
think
I
that
just realized he had career numbers last year for the 9 games he played in.
yeah, no, because well, again, because he was able to get some more field time and actually get like some more looks. Because every time he was playing in Winnipeg before that, he was constantly just overshadowed by Schoen, Lawler, Dembski, like and gang. You know what I mean? But for a
Yeah.
good stint of it, Tim White kind of hadn't really popped off, so he wasn't getting as many looks as maybe he would have been had he been performing properly. And then Shamar Bridges, he was doing well, but I mean, besides that, O'Leary Orange just had a bit more room to grow last year, and so I think that kind of allowed him to kind of open
So
up and have a bit of a better year.
just before we go on to our next team, so if you look at it, you have Redmond, the three linemen that count as the seven starting Canadians.
Yep.
Revenberg, Woodmansey, Dobson. You have Keandre Smith at the one slot back. Wolotarski, so that's five. Baker at middle linebacker, that's six, and then Kachatonis at seven.
Yeah.
There's your seven Canadians. So you'll betcha you'll get a lot of American starters
No, absolutely.
on this team. Oh, and don't forget Luther Hakuna Navanu as well.
You love saying that name, don't you?
Hey, it's at least one name that I can pronounce properly.
He's like Hakuna Vanu. It's awesome. All right.
But
So what would we? What are we gonna rate? So we have to first start by giving a letter grade. Um, to be honest, I think I know what mine is.
so if we only upgraded on defensive, like, yeah, I know we upgraded on defensive line, but if we got like one or two more players for like defensive line, like big name players on that linebacker, I'd even give the team like an A plus. But you know what? I would say because they added Lawler, Amos, Stubberfield, you know, people are gonna call me a homer. I'm okay with an A minus.
I actually just give him a flat A. I give the Ticats an A here. No, seriously, with bringing in Gavea and then locking up a lot of that offensive line through 1, potentially 2 years. Actually, most of the D line is signed to 2-year deals. Having that kind of stability is really good. Having Lawler signed to 2 years is really big. I will say nearly $300,000 is a lot of money.
I mean,
But
between that and what did I have him down as making? We'll round it up and say 225 because it's 224 800. So we'll say 225.
you have 275 on mine.
No. I'm saying for Tim White,
Oh.
I'm gonna round it up and say 225 because it's 224 800.
Oh, I see.
So I'm gonna say 225 for Tim White. You're almost paying $500,000 for two receivers. They best be going off this year.
Yeah. But I think all in all, if we're looking at predictions for the Hamilton Tiger Cats this year, in terms of standings,
Just standing wise,
in the East, where would you put them?
I would say top two.
I
They're
think that
they're gonna at least be hosting a playoff game this year.
I'm gonna say top 3, and I'd say that I would I think they're making the playoffs for sure. It'll really depend a bit on Montreal and Toronto. I think realistically, probably the most likely outcome in terms of their performance in the standings is probably second place. So not bad at all, and a lot of potential there. But now we shall enter to the land
of the QE battle of the QEW down to the 6, as players would like to say.
To Toronto. Now, you have Chad Kelly here, 3 years, 1.865. That has to be his whole, like, not per year.
Yes. No,
That's his whole deal. Okay.
Yeah, that's
Sorry, the
over
other
the
ones you
3
said
years.
275, and I thought you meant 275 per year. But
Yeah,
then you
no,
said
I didn't see what the actual breakdown is. I tried to look for the actual
oh, okay.
breakdown
Well,
per year, but I just seen that it
but
was that
we
much
know
over 3 years.
we know it's slightly north of at least $500,000 then. So
So basically, Chad Kelly's making more money than Nathan Rourke is.
okay. Yeah, and then they did re-sign Arbuckle, which meant it made sense. He won in the fucking Grey Cup, so say what you want about him.
I will say this: I'm actually quite surprised that they brought Cameron Dukes back. The reason why is because Chad Kelly goes and rushes, but now I would have went for like someone like the Prukop as like a short yardage, because now you have Arbuckle, who won you the Grey Cup. Cameron Dukes, okay, he could be a QB2 on any other team. Now he's I would say QB3 on this team.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah. A little
who's to
surprising
say?
that Cameron Dukes didn't join the carousel of backup quarterbacks in Winnipeg. So, but then the other interesting thing is with their running back situation.
Nice.
They bring in Kevin Brown. What do you think of
Yes.
that? Because they now have Kevin Brown with McMahon and Kadeem Carey.
So, if I remember correctly, last year Toronto doesn't just have one running back. Like Ryan Dinwiddie's packages that their offense runs,
Yeah.
they use 3 different running backs. So McMahon only had 288 yards, but he had 4 touchdowns and 48 carries as kind of like I would say a second like an RB2 last year. But now that Daniel Adnaboye has gone to Ottawa, you'll have Kevin Brown as the RB2. Kadeem Carey will still get his touches, but you'll have more of like all 3 of them.
Yeah. So.
And don't forget, Kevin Brown is a catcher and a receiver as well, because he did have 138 receiving yards.
Yeah. Do we know do we know the term on Kadeem Carey's deal?
Kadeem Carey? No, I was looking for that today and I did not find it. So
I see.
I'm sure it will come out. It just hasn't came out yet.
Okay, I see. But to be honest, a pretty solid running back situation for the Argos. I don't really see where any real concern there. Which then brings us to the receiving core, where they have DeMonte Coxey, Devarius Daniels, Unger, third, all locked up. Coxey and Daniels for 2-year deals. And then they also sign Hergy Mayala from the Elks. Janarian Grant is locked up for 2 years, so they got the return game figured out in that regard. So, how do you...
Bruno LaBelle came from Saskatchewan.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I just put in the terms 24 because he was last year with Saskatchewan. But so what were you gonna ask? What I thought about the receiving core?
Kind of, yeah. What do you
So
think where they're at with that?
Here's the thing. So as of right now, until like future notice, there's some big holes to fill, my friends. And when I say big holes, you have Polk's numbers to replace.
Yep.
From last year. So, yeah, Dejon
Although,
Brissett.
to be fair, we have to realize that Polk really didn't get it going until halfway through the season.
No, but he was still... Okay,
he definitely became an integral part of the offense, though. This is true.
Yeah, but, I mean, once Chad Kelly came back, him and Polk were like bread and butter.
This is true.
So then Brissett only played 6 games last year, so he'll get more playing time. Mittal, with it being his first year last year, he'll get more playing time. So I mean, it's with Toronto because I see a lot of Hamilton and Toronto games. Like when I go to Toronto with Connor in person, I see like a vast majority, at least 3 games in Toronto, anyways. When Hamilton goes there,
Yeah.
um, Toronto, Chad. The way that Toronto does it is they don't just have one guy; they like to spread the ball all around.
Yeah, that was kind of a thing that we noticed last year with Chad Kelly was that and this was where defenses had trouble is that it can sometimes be easy when you're watching film on another team to kind of see which guy's constantly getting the ball and kind of tailor your defense towards preventing that one guy. But with the Argos, not even just last year, but I think last year was very noticeable. They were really tossing that everywhere, so it just kind of kept the defense on their toes, and which I think helped the Argos a lot in their success through the season. So, is there anything else that we for comment though on the receiving
On the
core,
receivers,
or shall we get on to the offensive line as there's
offensive line we can get into.
as there is a lot here. So, firstly, let's start with Ryan Hunter. Ryan Hunter, he had won
Offensive of the year.
offensive lineman of the year, and
Yep.
the Toronto Argonauts then did the smart thing, which is sign that sumbitch for 3 years. And so they have him locked up till the end of the 2027 season. So good deal for Ryan Hunter there. Got his paycheck, got his bread, and is eating it too. And then
So just
you have a lot of
looking.
guys that are. Hold on a second. I'll finish up soon. You have a
Okay.
lot of guys that are locked up for numerous years. So Sirocco as well as John Bossy, at least I think, or either Boss or Bossy. You got both of them locked up for 2 years. You have Nicastro for 2 years, and then you got Doxtator as well as Moore, and it looks like Giffen as well locked up for 1 year. But what were you gonna say? Sorry.
I was gonna say, so Hunter, Darius Sirocco, and Peter Nicastro,
Mm-hmm.
they're their main 3 linebackers.
Yeah.
Because I know Isaiah Cage is still unsigned. Bossy was drafted last year, so he still has 2 more years left on his deal. Anthony Vendel, he was actually drafted in the 23 draft, but
Yeah.
went back to school, so that's why he has
Oh, I see.
a 3-year deal because he went back to school in 23, came in 24, so now that's why he's playing until 2026.
Okay.
So I mean, Toronto, I will give Toronto credit. Their offensive line, that I would say is their bread and butter because no matter who they bring in, they always have a top offensive line.
Yeah. This is true. But is there anything else to mention there, or shall we get to the
No,
defensive line?
we can get to the defensive line.
Now, the defensive line's a little bit interesting here. So they got Derek Parrish locked up for 2 years. Thank you
Yes.
for Derek Parrish coming on the show. But then 2 key losses here. Jared Brinkman as well as Jake Serezna no longer with the Argos for the D-line, which they were just integral pieces. So we'll have to see how they do with that. Now, they signed Celestion Haba from Winnipeg. He had done relatively well kind of in the circulation with Tijon Garbutt. But then you also got Anthony Lanier II, as well as DeMarcus Christmas and Atlius Bell. Also, I will say, I find it hilarious that someone's last name is actually Christmas.
Oh, I kid you not, I can't remember what team it was.
Yeah.
There actually was a player that was signed in the CFL. I'm trying to remember what team it was yesterday. His last name was Breakfast.
Ooh, that's good. That's good.
It was Luke. It was Luke something Breakfast. I'm like, wow, what a name. So the Laner, Christmas, and Bell signing
Yep.
actually happened at 6 o'clock in the
Oh,
evening
okay.
on Wednesday.
I see.
And then another defender that they signed, but
Yeah.
um but yeah, I think if I understood it correctly, from with the reading that I've done through the Argo fans is Parrish. I think it's going to be Parrish, Lanier. So Lanier the second is supposed to be taking Suarez in the spot at
Okay.
defensive tackle. So I think it's Parrish, Lanier, Christmas, and then maybe Haba. I think it is.
Okay.
Or I'm not familiar with the people that they brought in camp.
Yeah.
But that's, I believe, how
I know
it's
Haba plays
supposed
end,
to.
so if you're gonna throw him in there,
Yeah,
that'll be
and
his
I know
spot.
Parrish plays the end, so I think Laner and Christmas will end up playing the D tackle spots.
Okay.
Unless oh, I forgot. There's another former Bomber on there, Hansen. He also played D tackle, I think, and I'm not sure if Hergot is a D tackle or defensive end,
Theodric Hansen,
but
yeah. That's fair. But that then brings us to the linebacker core, which starting off, they have that trade where they acquire Cameron Judge from the Calgary Stampeders. And
and
who had
don't forget Ryder Varga came in a trade as well.
now with Cameron Judge, who did they lose again?
Flo, oh, I'm gonna screw up the last
Adnaboye or
name.
something?
No, Daniel Adnaboye went to Ottawa.
Not
No,
Daniel Adnaboye.
Flo Ormalade.
Ormalad,
Yeah, went to
Ormalad.
Calgary. Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know. There's those two long names, and I get them mixed up. I just know they're long, and they were on Toronto.
yeah.
So
So Varga was the one that came over in the what's the offense? Dejan Allen's
okay,
trade with BC.
I
So
see.
this is going to be the hard thing because I think Varga and Judge will split the will linebacker spot. McManus will take his rightful spot as the middle linebacker, and then Quentin Mauger.
I love the way you say that. His rightful spot.
Well, I mean that is his rightful spot as
Yes,
the middle linebacker
I know.
because that's his. He's the king of the linebackers with his toothpick.
I know. I'm just.
And then Quentin Mauger will be the Sam linebacker, or he was the starting Sam linebacker last year, anyways.
Okay. So, not feeling too bad there. If we go to the secondary, if we go to the DBs here, pretty much all of them signed for just a 1-year deal, with the exception of Blackburn. But how do you feel about
And Bratton.
How do you feel about who they got kind of in their secondary, and how that kind of complements
So,
the linebacker core?
It's funny because if you think about it, before Chris Jones came to Hamilton, Kenneth George Jr., Mark Milton, and Will Sutherland were all three on the Ticats last year. Soon as Chris Jones came to Hamilton, Kenneth George was cut that day and signed with Toronto. Then a couple of weeks later, Mark Milton signed with Toronto, and then Will Sutherland just signed with Toronto this year. From with what I've learned or been talking to with Argo fans, is Tyson Blackburn is going to be like a hidden commodity.
Hidden commodity, yeah.
Yes, thank you. Where it was only his rookie year, and because they had so much
He's
depth
23.
on
He's young.
No, but with what I've been told is he's going to be a dark horse.
Okay.
Once he can get more playing time, he'll be a dark horse. Deontay Evans, he played for us before he went to BC, so he'll play one of the corner spots.
Yeah.
Sutherland
Was he on Montreal?
He was on Montreal either before he came to Hamilton or after he went to Hamilton. It's
I thought he
that
was
same
on
Evans.
Montreal last year. Am I
No, he was
going to...
in BC last year.
Really?
Yeah.
I
So
swear. I swear I thought he was with yeah, I guess he was with Montreal in 2023 and then 2024 he was with BC. Holy shit, time
yeah,
flies.
so he left. He went from us to Montreal to
Yeah.
BC, now to Toronto.
Okay.
Um, I think if I had to guess, I'm pretty sure McFadden. I can't remember if McFadden was a halfback or safety. Because now that Amos is in Hamilton, believe, again, I think
In
they'll
Joe
put
Hendry?
McFadden at safety.
Yeah.
And then I don't know what Bratton was, if Bratton was a safety or not, but he came over from, I think, Edmonton, if
Yeah.
I'm not mistaken.
Hmm.
But
I see. So, decent amount of options there. If we get to special teams, they still have Lyram Haralahu as their kicker.
you can say that.
He's
You bugged
like
me about his last name, but now you can say Larham's last name.
Lyram Haralahu. It's a fun name to say. Once you learn it, it's fun to say. If you don't learn it, it's fun to make fun of people who can't. But then it's funny. I see you have not Josh. You have John Haggerty as in there.
Yeah,
as well.
so that is a global. That's not the Haggerty that you guys have.
It's a different.
This
Haggerty.
John Haggerty is
we have
global
Josh
player.
Haggerty, so this is John.
Yes.
Okay. I see. But
he's a free agent. They have Jeremy Edwards.
Overall, Haralahu, consistent kicker for them for years after years after years. And punt and kickoff return, that goes to Jannary and Grant. And it's going to be that way for the next 2 years as he signed a 2-year deal. Now,
Yes.
Toronto Argonauts, how would you grade their free agency?
I mean, they did bring back Kadeem Carey. They upgraded at running back with Brown. All three quarterbacks are back. They lost a couple of offensive linemen,
as well as a couple of defensive linemen.
Yeah, but you don't know what you're going to get in Lanier or Christmas. Because, again, I'm more familiar with the East players. I know
exactly what I'm getting in Christmas, and it's going to be the Holly Jolly Spirit. So,
funny guy. Well, I can tell you, Haba, Lanier, or Christmas did not get any sacks at their last team.
Yes, a lump of coal.
And they didn't get many tackles either.
A lump of coal for them.
Yes.
But overall, what letter grade would you give? Because we still have 2 more teams we got to get through.
No, I know. I'm just trying to think. Oh, this is so... You know what? I would honestly be comfortable with saying for them to give him an A. I would say an A minus.
I wouldn't give him an A minus. I give him a B.
No.
I think they were able to make. I think they were able to make some decent moves. I do. I think the loss of both Serezna and Brinkman stinks. I think all in all, they lose Polk, and they bring in Mayala, but I think you maybe tried to grab a bit of a bigger fish in the market. I think all in all, I think it was an okay free agency for them. But I think their main focus, and rightfully so, was mostly on re-signing talent they already had rather than kind of making a splash, which is why I can't really give them anything higher than a B.
So the thing is that it could have been a lot worse. Like had they have not signed
Oh yeah,
Linier
which
or
is why I gave him a
Christmas.
B, because it could have been a C or a D or an F. So it could have been a lot worse.
I I don't know. I just like yeah, on paper they may not. You may think that they're a B. I just think with the
No, no,
I've
no, no. I'm not saying
no
their
no
roster is a B. I'm saying
no,
the
but like
moves
for
they
free
made.
agency.
Yeah,
But what I'm saying is, for all of these camp players that they brought in through, February, free agency, January, you would be surprised of what players that they can turn
well,
into.
you know what I'll
So,
do then? I'll make it a B plus. I'll make it a B plus. I'll give them a B
so
plus.
the difference between us is just a minus
Yeah,
because I said A minus, you said B plus.
yeah.
So
We'll
tit
say
for
B
tat.
plus. That seems fair. But
Okay,
all in
now
all,
your question is
even then. So now, where do you see them finishing in the standings?
so this is the hardest thing that I've had to go through in my 11-hour stream because we still have two other teams that still have two good teams. So, and it's going to suck because there's going to be a good team in fourth. And this is why I think this is going to be the year that all four East teams make the playoffs. But I'm going to say with Chad Kelly being a top quarterback, best I would say first, worst I would say third.
Yeah, no, I think
I
they're
can't see them finishing fourth. The only way
no,
that
no.
I can see them finishing fourth is
Chad Kelly injury.
no, but then you have Arbuckle who did well in the playoffs. I would say the defensive line.
If that defensive line just does
Yeah,
not figure it
because I
out.
mean, like you said, they lost. They lost they've their whole secondary is they lost probably three or four players from their secondary.
Yeah.
So okay, so I won't say defensive line. I'll say defense because I don't know if you remembered it last year. Because in my live stream I looked it up. 10 out of 18 games last year, their defense gave up 30 plus points.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so I would say third at worst.
That's fair. But I think that's probably how we'll do it then for Toronto, which then brings us. We got two more teams left. It
Ready
is
to go
now
for
almost
the
2
last
a.m.
Ontario province.
But we're gonna start with the Ottawa Red Blacks.
Red Blacks.
We're starting with Drew Brown leading the charge at the quarterback position. Got nearly 4,000 passing yards, 18 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, so relatively good. Played 17 games last year, and then with his backups, Dustin Crum stuck around, and now Matthew Schiltz over in Ottawa. How do you feel about the quarterback core in Ottawa?
The way that I think it will work is Brown will start, Schiltz will be backup, Crum will be yardage.
Okay.
I can't see Schiltz being third and Crum being second.
Yeah, no, I can agree with you there. Overall, I think relatively solid. If we move to their running backs, they
actually have a running back this year.
Yeah, no. Ever since they dropped Armstead, they just didn't really. I'm assuming off field shenanigans. That was kind of what it had sounded like. They didn't really have much of a running game at all after that. So William Stanback, big improvement in that regard. Only thing you don't want to be throwing it to William Stanback. BC tried doing that last year, and I'll put it this way, Rick. We walked in to the game, BC versus Saskatchewan, And the very first play they tried was to dish it to stand back and stand back. Oh, and then A.J. Allen said, "Thank you very much. I'm going to go get my first career pick 6. Go fuck yourself," which he did. And then he took an incredible video with us afterwards. You can watch the short on the channel. A.J. Allen, absolute G. But William Stanback, good when you use him as a running back. Not so great when you try to throw to him.
I mean,
so hopefully they learn their lesson.
We can't say he's not a bad receiver because he's still got 413 receiving yards.
Yeah, but there was also a lot of time he here's the thing. When he catches the ball, he does well.
Okay, I will give you that. When he catches the ball.
If he catches the ball, the run he has after that is really good. I'm saying there's a lot of instances when with the way he fumbles around with some of those catches, there's a heightened potential of a turnover. You know what I mean? And so overall, I would advise against it, especially since, as we're going to get into this soon, they brought in some big guns at receiver, so you shouldn't have to do it as much. But we'll get to that. They have Daniel Adeboye.
Adeboye, yeah.
And
he's going to get more playing time after leaving Toronto for Ottawa too. So he didn't leave Toronto by choice. He got traded.
Yeah. But I think there's a lot of potential for him. And then I'm really curious about Devontae Williams with him not playing this past season.
Playing last year. He's still signed a contract though.
Yep. No, I'm just curious because we don't have as good of a frame of reference. So
I want to say they'll most likely use him if he's back to playing this year. I'm sure they will use him as a returner.
Okay.
If I remember correctly, I think he was the returner.
Yeah.
Before last season when he got injured.
Okay, now that then brings us to the receiving core. So they got Justin Hardy linked up 2 years. Pimpleton still for another year. Braylon Addison still for another year. Nick Mardner, they drafted him in 2024. They got him through for the next 2 years. Still only 25 years old. Andre Miller, has a 1-by-1 option. He expires at the end of this year. Dubois, they have him for 2 years. Devontae Dedman, he had went up and spent a little stint in the NFL, came back down. They got him for 2 years. Maurice French, they got him for 1. And then it appears they have a 2-year deal for Eugene Lewis being the big signing here. So the big fish now. So they lose Dominic Rhymes, but Eugene Lewis comes in. And I'm not going to lie, if I'm the Ottawa Redblacks, I take that. That's a change of pace I'd take. I am A-okay losing Dominic Rhymes to game. And nothing against Dominic Rhymes. Eugene Lewis is a...
Not only that, but you know that Eugene Lewis is going to go get those 50-50 balls.
Mm-hmm. He will. And I think having a guy like Eugene Lewis with a guy like Drew Brown, who's still, a relatively young quarterback in the sense of he doesn't really, not as established as some others and is really making his mark. Having Eugene Lewis paired with him, a guy who's going to get that ball, is really, really important. So I think a bit of an improvement to the receiving core this year of the Ottawa Redblacks and a decent amount of some younger guys that I think will be able to do maybe a little more than they did in the past. Which is it all right if we go to their offensive line?
Go ahead.
Now, that then brings us to their offensive line. Now, they have, when it comes to 2-year deals, they got 3. They got Peter Godber, which they get from the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Good signing. He was a relatively good there. Zach Pelahos. They got him for, I'm talking just the 2-year deals right now. As well as Zach Pelahos. And then Drew Desjardins. He had spent a little bit of time with the New England Patriots, not this past year, but the year prior. Spent some time in Winnipeg before that. In my opinion, Drew Desjardins is the standout offensive lineman in Ottawa. I would kill to have him back in Winnipeg. Seriously, absolutely love Drew Desjardins. Fantastic lineman, and looks to be a relatively decent core around him. I think this past year, Ottawa finally got them kind of playing in sync, as I think that was an issue before that, and they hadn't really they hadn't really gotten that going, and so I think there's a decent amount of potential. What do you think of kind of their offensive line?
Um, it'll be interesting to see how Bull does this year, because if it's the player that I think it is, um, he has always gotten injured.
And who are you referring to? Sorry.
Dante Bull, I think it was. If he's the first round draft pick from a few years ago, that if I remember correctly,
Yeah.
let me just pull this. Yeah, so he is a first round draft pick in uh 23.
Yeah.
In 23 he only played 9 games. Last year he only played 7. So this is his contract year. So he's a questionable person that I would have.
I see.
He kind of reminds me of like Joel Figueroa, where like when Joel was with us, like he was never healthy.
Yeah. But overall, I think a relatively decent offensive line. But I think it's probably wise if we now get to the defensive line. So they got
Yes.
Lorenzo Malden the fourth. They got him for 1 year. Lang for 2 years. And he appears to be the only one they have on a 2-year deal. Now, Okpoko, they drafted him, so they will have him for 2 years. But a little bit of a different situation as he was drafted. But then I'm going to be honest, not a ton of faces that I'm familiar with. Not necessarily that, and it's not even just because like some of them are new to the team, some of them stuck around. I wasn't really as much familiar with their defensive line last year.
So, Christian Albright, who's at the bottom of the list, he came over from Saskatchewan.
Okay.
If I had to say, so the top 4, for Ottawa on their defense line is obviously Malden. Malden's been their key.
Yeah, I recognize him. That's the staple.
Lang, Aiden. I was gonna say Carter, but Aiden John and Bryce Carter. Those are kind of like the top 4.
Okay.
Of the offensive line. Deontay Knight. It's funny because with Deontay Knight, he started with Toronto last year. He got added to the practice squad. We signed him off of the practice squad, so he played with us for the rest of the year. And then he ended up being on our practice squad by the end of the year, got released, because at the end of the season, all practice roster players get released. And then, on top of it, he then now ends up in Ottawa. So he'll by the end of this season, he would have played for all of Ontario.
Yeah. So, let's see here. Should we get to linebackers?
Sure.
We start with linebackers. Got to start with Santos Knox. Definitely the staple there. But then also some decent pieces in Adarius Pickett, who he did not play last year, but I believe he was relatively decent the year before, if I remember.
He tore his Achilles last year, if I'm not mistaken.
He had dealt with injuries, so that was problematic. But Frankie Griffin sticks around, as well as Davian Taylor. And then they bring in Cam Bright. Do you know where they brought him from?
Cam Bright is an American that came from... And apparently he was... Oh, no. It can't be that Cam. There's 2 different Cam Bright. So he came from the University of Washington.
Yeah.
In the off season. Oh no, sorry. So he actually funny fact. He started with Calgary at the beginning of February.
Mm-hmm.
By September, he was on Ottawa.
Yeah.
By October, he was on Winnipeg's practice roster. 10 days later, he was released by Winnipeg. the following day he was signed by Ottawa. So he's, I would say he's a little bit of, he'll probably be back on the practice roster
Yep.
this year.
Yeah, no, that's fair. But overall, decent linebacker core. Not a ton of change for the Red Blacks there. Now, if we look at their DBs, mostly guys with 1 years, except for Alonzo Ade, who is on a 2-year deal. DeAndre Lamont, though, they keep him around, as well as McGee and Justin Howell and Robert Priester. So a lot of familiar faces in that regard, but then a few new faces with Tunde Adelke, as well as Amari Henderson. Craig James comes over from a trade they had with the Argos. How are you feeling about the secondary, the DB core, the Red Blacks?
Um, Lamont, I'm not sure which of the three positions Lamont plays, but he was a top player, and McGee, I remember those two. Priester comes over from Toronto. Amari Henderson comes over from Saskatchewan. So I would say Nylon, the guy at the bottom, I'm pretty sure he came over from Montreal, if I'm not mistaken. So I would say it would be Lamont, McGee, Priester, Henderson, and Adeleke
Yeah.
for their 5 secondary positions. Again, I'm not in Ottawa, so I don't know what the other players on their team are like. But if I had to guess, those would be the 5 starters.
Yeah. I see. Relatively decent secondary, but we'll have to see how that rolls out. Which then brings us to special teams, where they got Richie Leon as well as Lewis Ward. Lewis Ward had done kind of the majority of their kicking. They have him locked up for 3 years till the end of the 2027 season. He was 88%, relatively decent. Hit a 54-yarder as his longest. But overall, it seems like that's who they'll be rolling with. Pimpleton as well as Devontae Denman will be their 2 main returners this year. They'd kind of gone a bit with each, and and so overall, I'm curious to see how that goes. I think overall that they had done relatively well with that. And so I expect them to kind of continue with the system that they've had in prior years.
So if Williams can return to the way that he played before, you have
Williams?
yeah, I'm talking about Devontae Williams.
Are you talking
He'll
Devontae?
help.
Well, you mean Devontae Dedman?
No, Devontae Williams, the running back, the
Oh,
one that
okay.
didn't play last year. So
Oh,
the reason I know we're on special teams, but
you're talking if they had him play. Okay.
no. So what I'm saying is, if he can get back to the way that he was,
Yeah,
just think of that two-headed monster between Williams and Dedman as your returners.
that would be pretty good.
That would be amazing. And then add Pimpleton on top of that. That's like 3. I mean, they're not no Janarian Grants, but I mean, that's still a good receiver core or
Yeah,
special teams core.
but overall, what would you grade the Ottawa Red Blacks off season?
I mean,
They signed Geno Lewis
they
as
actually
kind
have
of
a
the big
running back
one.
this year.
They fixed the running back situation, which definitely was a bit of a pressure point for them. They needed to do something about that. Kind of touch up the offensive line a little bit. Added Matthew Schultz. Besides Eugene Lewis, I don't think they really made much massive moves, but I think they did. I think they did relatively well at kind of looking at where this roster had some holes and where they could kind of plug. So, what do you think?
Um, What are we going on first? The grade or
Grade.
standings?
Grade.
Grade.
So
Oh,
this
this
is
is
kind
gonna
of
be so hard.
compared to where they were before. You know what I mean?
I mean, compared to where they were before, it's a big improvement. The only see, the only thing is, I don't know their defensive line all that well, so I don't want to say.
Yeah, I'm just not as familiar with that either. I'm kind of in the same.
Like, I want to say they're. See, I'm torn between. Like, I want to say B plus, but then because they brought in Lewis and Stanback, and they've added some stuff onto their defensive back.
To me,
I want to say A minus, just because they
I'm
brought
kind of
in.
in the same boat. I'm kind of hovering between a B plus and an A minus. I think I'm gonna go with a B plus. And that's not saying that they're not worthy of an A minus. I've kind of mentally flip flop between the two. I just think that in order for me to get them guaranteed to an A minus or even potentially an A, is just if they just did a little bit more than what they did. But I think overall they did well at not blowing the entire budget, but spending a little bit of money and kind of plugging some of the holes that they had in their roster. So overall, I
So
think
here,
Red
so
Blacks
here,
did relatively well.
here comes the big question for you. So
Okay.
because I did the letter grade first, I'm going to ask you this: where do you see Ottawa in the standings?
Where do I see Ottawa in the standings? I see them finishing anywhere between second and fourth, in the sense of that.
Ooh, you actually have them in fourth.
Well, here's the thing.
Okay.
What they're even all four teams in the East look like they're going to be relatively decent.
Yes.
Someone has to become fourth. Someone has to be fourth. Now, I'm not
Okay.
saying that the Red Blacks are going to be fourth. I'm saying
Yeah.
they're
Worst
at their
case scenario.
best, they're going to be second,
Okay.
as I just don't see them good enough to do first. However, if this all comes crumbling down, I could see them being fourth. Now, that fourth could still make playoffs with a crossover. I want to make sure that's key. I'm not saying they're out of playoffs, but I'm saying I think at their best, they're second. At their worst, they're bottom of the East. And when it comes to crossover, that is a maybe. So that's where I think, and I don't think it's offensive to say that. I don't like I still think it's a massive I think it's a big improvement from where they are in terms of from a stability standpoint. So
See, because when I was looking at this on Tuesday, I had a hard time juggling between my top three.
yeah,
Like I had Hamilton, Toronto. You could juggle those 1, 2. I had a hard time juggling between Montreal and Ottawa at like 3, 4.
yeah,
But at the same time, like you said, with a possibility of a possible crossover because here the reason why I'm saying a possible crossover is I would take any receiving core in the East over half of the receiving core in the West.
fair enough.
Because
Now,
I mean, you have Lawler, Tim White, Hardy, Eugene Lewis, Pimpleton, Coxey,
Austin Mack,
Daniels,
Tyson Philpott, Joel
Austin Mack,
Speaker,
Philpott.
Charleston
Yeah,
Rambo.
like I mean, there's so many
Oh,
in
if
the
you're talking,
East.
I cannot hear you, Rick.
Oh, your earbuds?
My headset died, so 1 second.
Oh, okay.
Give me a minute. Sorry about that. A little bit of an issue with my headset, but as my earbuds died because we were recording for so long. It is now 2:21 a.m. and we still got one more team to cover, so we'll get on it. As we got the Montreal Alouettes. Now, if we're talking here first about the receiving, about not the receiving core, the
Quarterbacks.
the quarterbacks. A bit of a strange situation here. So they acquire McLeod Bethel Thompson as they trade Cody Fajardo for him. Bit of a strange trade. But then they sign Davis Alexander to a 3-year deal, 26 years old. And so they have him locked up for a bit. So it looks like they want to give Davis Alexander a bit more of a bigger role than he had previously. Potentially maybe a bit of a 1A, 1B kind of a situation until they kind of are comfortably, fully giving him the reins. Bethel Thompson last year played something kind of similar with Trey Ford, so it kind of makes sense to have a quarterback like him there. But Davis Alexander played pretty well when he was in when Fajardo was injured. He had kind of held that fort relatively strong and was able to play and still get a lot out of the receiving core for the Alouettes here. So what do you think about kind of the quarterback situation with Montreal?
Even though, what was it, like 4 games that Davis Alexander played while
Like
Cody
start
Fajardo
to
was
finish
out?
the games he played, yeah.
Yeah. I just think I want to see a full season from him
We need the Jake
before.
Mayer test run. That's what we need. One season of
Yeah, like
this is the guy.
I just want to see like a full season
Yeah.
before, I say like he's going to be. I mean, yeah, he is 26, but like a full season before I can say, okay, he's going to be, an elite starter.
Yeah. I think
Kind
he
of
has
like
that kind of
Drew
potential,
Brown did
but
with Ottawa last.
we need to see if that's going to be kind of realized and relatively consistent.
Like, is he going to be like the next Drew Brown, Jake Mayer, where he can go be a starter and do well, or is he just going to like fall on his face?
I think Drew Brown and Jake Mayer you can keep in a little bit of a different category, as in the sense of I think Drew Brown's been able to do a little bit better than Jake Mayer in some aspects, in the sense of even after Jake Mayer's first years, there were kind of calls for him to kind of that maybe this wasn't the right decision.
So
I haven't really seen that with Drew Brown nearly as
the
much.
so the other question is, let's just say, for discussion's sake, Davis Alexander falls on his face. He
Okay.
doesn't do well.
Still got Bethel
They now
Thompson.
make no. That's where I was going. They make
Yeah.
McLeod Bethel Thompson good, starter.
Yeah.
Now, do we see the Bethel Thompson from Toronto, or do we see the Bethel Thompson from Edmonton, where
Well,
he didn't
where
do well?
what I would say is now that will bring us, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the offensive line afterwards. That's where I think the performance of the offensive line is going to matter a bit more. As remember, Bethel Thompson is much more a stand in the pocket and kind of work your magic that way. Whereas I think Davis Alexander is able to kind of scramble and be a little bit more creative with the way he kind of runs his plays. Now, it's funny. So there might be a little bit of a competition there, but if we're talking competition for a role, oh my God, they have a lot of running backs in Montreal.
Yes, actually, it's funny because I thought Regis. I could have sworn I seen him go to Calgary, but he actually re-signed with Montreal.
Oh yeah,
So I had to move from Calgary to Montreal.
fair enough. So how do you feel about the situation here? As Walter Fletcher, 2-year contract, they got him. Dajan Edwards, they have him signed for 3 years, only 23 years old. An American that they got up in the system. So how do you feel about, and then they still obviously with Sean Thomas Erlington, like how do you feel about the running back core for the Alouettes?
I mean, I'll just put it this way. I know Walter Fletcher is a dual threat where he plays wide receiver and running back.
Yeah,
Well, let me tell you, he goes down, their running game is going to have some problems.
yeah, no, definitely, but he's definitely the standout that they have there.
I mean,
141
yeah, Sean
carries,
Thomas Allen.
170.
Arlington.
764 yards, 5.4 yards on average.
I mean, yeah, Sean Thomas Arlington had, was a backup when he was with us, but if, say, Walter Fletcher went out for the season, is he really, that next upcoming one that can get you that 600-700 yard season? Probably not. They'll probably, bring in one of these other 6 running backs that they have.
Yeah.
And do like a 2-man down, but you never know.
Yeah. But that'll kind of move us towards the receiving core, which I think there's a lot of strength here. As Cole Speaker had kind of led the team last year with receiving yards, 823. He signs for 2 years. Charleston Rambo they got for 1 year, as well as Tyson Philpott and Tyler Snead. Austin Mack they still have for another 4 years, so he is locked up, and they had signed him partway through last year, so I think it'll be good to have him back and from the start. But he was definitely the longest term out of any contract signed in recent memory, especially for a non-quarterback. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
they signed him for just numerous years, so they got him to the end of the 2028 season. So a lot of time. So I believe it was a 5-year deal, as the first year was last year, with four more years for Austin Mack. So he'll be sticking around for a while. But then there's a lot of depth after that with guys like Shedler Furvius, who they had drafted in 2023. They have him through the end of this season, as well as Daniel Aladejo or Aladeo. They had drafted him in 2023. They have him through the end of next season. James Letcher Jr., who he had, has, a bit of potential, but
Emerged on the return game.
Hadn't really done a ton with him. Yeah, kind of done a bit more return game with him. But then they bring in Kyrick McGowan as well as Isaiah Washington. So we'll have to see how that goes. Isaiah Washington as well as Jalen Wayne, as well as, I guess, James Letcher Jr. They got them all for 2 years. So got a bit of term out of some of these wide receivers, but I think this is a very capable receiver core. Like it's one of those things. Even if one guy goes down, I don't think we see. No matter who that receiver is, I don't think we see this whole system grind to a halt like I would say some other teams.
And don't forget, Austin Mack only played 3 games last year. Tyler Snead only played 7. Philpott only played 9.
Yeah.
So, I mean, with Austin Mack back, you might as well say he was a free agent brought in because he only played 3 games. So there's another top receiver. Like, the East is going to be so interesting this year.
Yeah.
Especially with Hamilton having to play Ottawa and Toronto 3 times and only Montreal twice.
Yeah.
But it's just going to be interesting to see how well their receiving core does this year.
Yeah, which that'll kind of bring us to the offensive line here. They got Nick Callender, Joshua Donovan, Jesse Gibbon. They keep all those guys around. When it comes to 2-year deals, they got Callender as well as Gibbon, Theo Grant, Justin Lawrence, and Ed Montelis, all on 2-year deals. Everyone else on just a 1-year deal. But all in all, I think this is relatively, for the most part, the same offensive line as last year. I don't think there was a ton of change. If like,
there's been a few that have left.
Yeah.
But not many, one or 2 left.
Yeah, but I don't think there's been any massive overhaul. How do you feel about their offensive line? I thought their offensive line last year was fantastic, and so I think them being able to pretty much keep around most of them is relatively good. So I don't think there's much, if you're an Alouettes fan, you can complain about there.
Yeah. Now, this next position that we're going to move on to,
defensive line.
So here's the thing. So, Berglund, I think, if I'm not mistaken, did he not win top defender last year, or he was up for top?
Oh, he.
Oh no, sorry, it was him and Roland that was up, and he would
Yeah,
just
and he lost to Roland Milligan Jr.,
yeah.
but he was
So
nominated. Yeah.
you got to remember, there's him, Mustafa Johnson, Sean Oakman, who everyone thought that had retired, but he didn't,
Nope.
and then Joshua Archibald
Yeah, that's
as
kind of
their
your
front four. Like
that's your front four.
that's a
Yeah,
crazy front four.
that's a very good front four, and it's one of those things where I think it'll be very very nice for the Alouettes that when it comes to having that strongest D line in the East, I think the Argos have been a little weakened, so I think it looks a little better for them, but. A little bit of strength as well with the Ticats, but I think they got a really really solid group of defensive linemen, and we'll have to see if this year, what kind of an impact they're able to make, if they're able to keep the Alouettes near the top of the standings, kind of where they were last season. I think they can be a really key part of that. Offense wins games, defense wins championships, as they say. So I think that if the Alouettes are looking to make any sort of push, I think that'll be kind of a big component of that. So, but they got Berglund as well as Trevor Mason, as well as Butta Jones and Joshua Archibald, all at 2-year deals. Everyone else with a 1-year deal, with the exception of Sean Oakman, where it's a little bit unknown his contract.
They just said that he signed.
Yeah, which now will bring us to the linebackers.
So I call this.
I'm gonna let you start with this.
So with the West, you have Niles Morgan and what's his name, and Nick Anderson, the two-headed linebacker duo for Edmonton. We have Beverett and Sankey, the two-headed linebacker duo for Montreal, where all four linebackers got over 400 tackles, or like 400 tackles between all four, but each one has
everyone just had a shit
like 100 tackles each.
Yeah, jeez.
It's like the only thing that scares me with their linebacker group, besides those two, is if you look at Sankey, everyone under them, their numbers just drop.
Yeah, no, there's a significant drop. I do think it's a little bit unfortunate for the Alouettes that with Therese Beverett and Darnell Sankey, you couldn't get either of them on a 2-year deal. But I mean, one-year deals are generally the norm in the CFL, so it's not entirely surprising. But they got a bit of youth underneath.
Depends on which GM you're talking to.
Yeah, but I'd say 1-year deals are still the most common. You know what I mean? Like league wide are relatively the most common, but definitely see more 2 and multi-year deals in general with some other stuff. At least now that we're getting a little bit further away from when COVID was. But Canton Arku, they had drafted him in 2024, only 26 years old. They still have him through this year and next year. Hopefully he's able to improve on his numbers. And then KD Davis they have for 2 years, along with Trey Thomas. Still young linebackers at 24 and 25 years old, respectively. So I'll be curious to see exactly how well they do this year. But having a 2-headed monster with Therese Beverett and Darnell Sankey, that's deadly. There's no great way to put that other than that. Which then brings us to the secondary. Defensive backs. How are you feeling about this?
I mean, Mark Antoine Dequoy, he's their safety.
Yeah.
You don't even have to say anything about him. You know what you're getting with him.
Needs no introduction.
I
still
Najee
remember
Murray,
him getting a friggin' sweet pick on us, our home opener last year against the Alouettes.
Najee Murray, Ento, Wesley Sutton, and Bryce I was going to say Crosby, but Cosby. Along with Dequoy, that's their starting secondary right there.
Yeah.
And then other than that, again, I don't know much about Burns, Hamlin, or LeBlanc. Like, unless, you're from Montreal, you know what their their depth is, but other than those five, I haven't really seen much
Yeah.
from backups in that.
Which will bring us down to
Special
I
teams.
guess, yeah. And then the only guys in 2-year deals are Sutton and Anto. I should mention that. As well as Arthur Hamlin, who was drafted in 2024. They have him through 2026. But then for special teams, they
Becomes
got
interesting.
David Cote as their kicker. They got him through for one more year. And then Maltos, I believe, was their punter. Is that right?
No, David
Or
Cote. I don't know if he was
or
injured or whatnot
or
last year, but
Maltos
Jose
and
Maltos
they
was
had played
their
both of them, yeah. But Maltos they have for 2
yeah
years. And
yeah
then
Cote's, and then you have two punchers as well.
so they got Sam Clark and Joseph Zema. So
Yeah,
Sam Clark for
both
3
signed
years
beyond this year. Don't ask me
and
how, unless
Joseph Zema. I was about to say 3 years for a punter seems a little confusing to me. He must be. I guess they have a lot of faith in this guy. So
I
we'll
mean
have to see.
unless they put one of them on the practice squad. Like I
Yeah,
can guarantee a Cote or a Maltos will be cut by the end of camp. Like you're
yeah,
not going to use two practice squad roster spots for a kicker and a punter.
yeah. But then that then leaves us with James Letcher Jr., who he is the returner. I don't think there's any question there.
No.
So, all in all, Montreal Alouettes letter grade for this
Okay, so we're
season.
just talking off season, right?
Yeah, yeah, just kind of.
I honestly, besides Oakman and Archibald, I okay. Are we including trades or no?
Yeah, we'll include trades.
Okay, so that's three players that they brought in. I would
And
say
one thing
C
I will say, the
plus.
Davis Alexander contract signing does not count as an off-season move because they made that during the season last year.
No, no, no. So I'm include in my grade. I'm including Thompson's trade, Archibald, and Oakman as the only players that they brought in. I'm saying C plus.
Yeah, no. To be honest, I'm thinking the same range. C plus. The Alouettes. To be honest, I think
Almost
they
did
did.
nothing.
They really. They to me they did
Bare
almost kind of
minimum.
what the Bombers did last year, which was re-sign a lot of talent, bleed a little bit of talent, and really don't make any of it up. So all I see the Alouettes this year as the same Alouettes as last year, but a little bit weaker, and gives a little bit more of an opportunity for teams in the West. Now the interesting thing is because of the uncertainty at quarterback. I mean, you're talking about a big change going from Cody Fajardo to Davis Alexander and McLeod Bethel Thompson. In terms of where this team could place anywhere from first to fourth. I think there's a relative amount of uncertainty in the Alouettes. Now, realistically, they'll probably finish somewhere kind of in that murky middle in that second or third spot. Um, if they're able to just kind of roll on that defense and really play rock solid, and that offensive line is able to be an absolute force for either Davis Alexander or McLeod Bethel Thompson, we could maybe still be having first in the conversation, which is why I don't take them out of that. But to me, I think the Alouettes have the least amount of certainty, just in the sense of that they're the same team, but they bled a little. So I don't know. I don't see them going on a run in terms of that huge winning streak they had last year. I don't see that in their future.
Mm-hmm.
Not saying that they won't win games and they won't have winning streaks, but not the same level of dominance. So I say anywhere from first to fourth in the East. Again, barring that still could be a playoff spot with a crossover and whatnot. But that's kind of where I'm at. I have no idea.
Yeah.
What do you think? Are you kind of in the same boat or?
I want I say 1 to 3. The only way that they go down to 4
Is if Davis Alexander gets injured and McLeod Bethel Thompson shits the bed. and the defense does
Yes.
not perform the way as expected.
No. Defense can still perform. It's just they would have no offense.
Yeah.
So that's the only.
Yeah,
So
here's the thing as well though. Even if the offense is okay, if the defense can't stop anything, then the receiving core of the East is gonna run all over them, even though they'll have a good receiving core themselves. You know what I mean? Like, because I expect we're probably gonna be having some high scoring East versus East games.
yeah.
So
Considering that Hamilton has to play Ottawa and Toronto 3 times each,
yeah.
those are going to be some important division games.
Is there anything else we got here, Rick? Or I think we've now.
Let's just remind fans that watched the West video yesterday, or whenever you watch the West video.
We have an hour and a half covering the entire West, and it looks like we got now an hour and a half covering the East.
I just want to say, DeMario Houston got released by Calgary after we were kind of going into what would they do.
And so if anyone's if anyone's wondering the full story, you should check out our video on the West where we go into a lot more depth about that situation, what maybe could or could not have happened, and the implications with that with the CFL, and the things that were similar to situations that have already happened, and what makes that a little bit different. So a lot of good information in that. So make sure you guys check that out. I'm gonna say thank you so much for everyone watching. Make sure you guys like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already. If you're listening to this on Spotify, first of all, thank you. Second of all, and leave us 5 stars. We'd really, really appreciate it. Rick, is there anything else that we need before we wrap this up? Because it is 2:45 in the fucking morning.
Yes. One last thing. If you want Ticat content, come over to Ticat Talk Network channel.
Link in the description below.
Now you can do the outro.
There you go. So, peace, love, and positivity to all you wonderful people at home, and we will see you guys next time.